Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kadara Woman podcast, the podcast dedicated to amplifying the often overlooked success stories of remarkable African women who are barrier breakers, status quo challengers, and change makers around the world. I'm your host, Lola Harris. I just want to take a moment and just say thank you to each and every one of you who tuned in to listen to our very first episode. I hope you learn, grow, and leave inspired. One of the many reasons why I wanted to start this podcast is that I'm fascinated about people who find something they are passionate about and figured out how to bring it to life, and were intentional about it as well. Some may call it their purpose, some their destined calling. Either way, these are the stories I plan to curate and share, however, from the lens of the African woman. And today's guest has done that exactly. Yetunde Shorters is a former model, former PR director for a classical music company, who became a certified personal branding coach and international publicist. She has worked with Grammy, Tony, and MTV award-winning artists who, thanks to her PR efforts, have been seen by more than 40 million people through more than 1,500 segments and features in outlets, including Good Morning America, Entrepreneur, Essence, and more. She's also helped 14 of her clients become Amazon best-selling authors. In our two-part conversation, Yetunde shares how she found her radical purpose, where she helps women build purpose-centered brands, and how she has created a life she truly loves. Listen in to our conversation. Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be talking to the one and only Yetunde Shorters today, and I am so grateful we get to talk today. Yetunde, love the hat. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's so good to be here. I feel all your good vibes, and I'm taking it all in. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you wore one of your hats because I know this is one of your collections, and I love it. And I'm sorry no one can see this, but just trust that she has a hat on. But thank you for being here on the Kadara Woman podcast. I appreciate your time today. Can't wait to dive in. And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to connect with you is because I felt your energy. You're just authentic. There's something very giving about your spirit. You're very inspiring. And also, full disclosure, I actually took one of your purposeful branding sessions, which was very clarifying. It was very definitive. It was a worthwhile experience. I honestly didn't have expectations going in. I just knew that I just needed to get something. I needed to try a different formula, and so I think through that experience, it obviously exposed me to you. I had almost 2 hours with you that day, and it was great. But yeah, so that's part of the reason why I thought you'd be great to start off the Kadara Woman podcast, just knowing the intent of the platform. And then also, I'll be remiss not to say this, but you were recently featured in the Forbes magazine, and we're talking about radical clarity. Congratulations on that accomplishment.
Thank you.
But for anyone who doesn't know you for some reason, can you please share what you do and what purpose means to you?
My name's Yetunde Shorters. I am very intentional about helping leading women, literally women who lead other people, to step into the next level of their purpose and what that could look like, and how they can use that to impact more lives with what they're good at, for who they are, and then to do it confidently, to build the community of their dreams, and to confidently make money, like helping women feel comfortable making money with something that comes easy to them, so that they can show up authentically as their full self. And so my whole brand is about connecting your purpose to prosperity and clarity for your next level.
Nice. I love that. That's very succinct, which is obviously she's clear in her mission. And so there's a lot about your background. And before we even delve into that, I think it's also important to know that you've had a 20-year successful PR career. You used to be a part-time model, and now you're a certified personal brand coach. What led you to make that transition to what you're doing today?
I think it's the whole thing now in retrospect makes sense now, right? And meaning, when people ask me, when did you start PR? Because my whole background started from there. I always say I started PR when I was 6 years old. There's a whole story around that. But, I always say I started PR when I was 6 years old. That was the first time I was exposed to the word public relations officer. And I remember that just stuck with me. And then, you're as a Nigerian woman, you're either an attorney, a doctor, an engineer, or a banker. Oh, you're in oil and gas. And
Yep.
I picked law, so I was going to be an attorney. I was in the debating society in high school. I was that square. I was that square kid who was okay being square, nerdy. And so I just always thought I was going to go to law school until I got to university. And one of my electives was in the communications, and we had to do an ad for, what is it called? For Verizon. And it was in that moment, literally, and then we did the ad and we presented it. And it was in that moment I realized, are you telling me that a 30-second commercial can reach millions of people and affect their choice? 30 seconds. And I'm like, you know what? I want to reach more people. That whole experience switched me full on to PR.
Hmm.
And I remember deciding, all right, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I'm on this communications path, and PR is I want to help people get their message out. And so that journey began then. And modeling was that kind of was a part-time thing. And the thing about modeling that it helped me, because I was that really scrawny, skinny girl at that age. And so I was very self-conscious. And I would wear jackets to cover my collarbone, and I would wear pants to cover my legs.
Wow.
But all of it was a security blanket, because I wasn't, I was made fun of. People I was so skinny, but I was like that. The only industry that accepted me for me was the modeling industry. And even a 00 didn't fit me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, some 00s for some brands didn't fit me. So this is the benefit of that, is I got to wear clothes by European designers and African designers that were customized for my body. And so as I grew, that experience grew to help me grow to love my body and my frame, and just affirmed me in a different way that the world couldn't. And so the thing is, what I learned from that is the power of imagery, the power of lighting, the power of colors. And now it makes sense, because bringing all of that to the work I do around personal branding, when I do photo shoots for my clients, it captures who they are at their core. So when you see the pictures 6 years later, they still look the same. You meet them outside, they look the same, even if they have makeup on. Like, people get to meet my clients, they're like, oh my God, you're even beautiful in person. And so those are the things that I learned, that now I'm like, that's why I went through that process. Because I'm able to validate the women I work with and let them embrace their body, whatever it is. And so the journey has been a mixture of everything I've learned, getting me to this place where I understand now that all of those things help me show up in this way for my clients, where your imagery, the quality of your work, and the intention behind it are aligned. So it's quality that looks good and that is purposeful. And that's what I'm selling.
Awesome. And so you transitioned through PR, you obviously gained a ton of experience, worked with a lot of celebrities, well-known people, and then of course had the part-time modeling, and then you stepped into coaching, and which is an interesting, I mean, there's so many interesting factors about that, because culturally we don't really do coaching, for one. And then second of all, it's just different from PR. The PR people still understand, but coaching in Nigerian, like, what are you doing? And so I guess the question is, when did you realize, I need to be, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is my calling. I'm supposed to be a personal coach.
Well, the thing is, even when I was doing PR, I've been coaching, because, it's one thing to do PR where you're just helping your client get publicity. I literally coach my clients through, because I always thought I wanted to be the kind of publicist that, God forbid, if anything happened to me, my clients are not stranded. So they needed to know how something happened, how to do this, I teach them how to write a pitch, like all of that stuff, press release, all of that stuff. And so for me, I've been coaching. And so coaching, when I think of coaching, I don't only think about life coaching or leadership. I'm like, how do you coach someone to understand something better? It's like being a teacher. The difference is, as a coach, it's about the results and the goal, right? And then I have pom-poms in my office, add pom-poms there. That's what I bring to the table. I'm your coach and your cheerleader. So I will, kick you in the tush a little bit, but also cheer you on when you're doing the things you need to do. And so a combination of those things puts me in a place where I'm able to, transfer what I've learned from PR into, okay, from all the things I've learned around personal branding and entertainment and the fashion industry and marketing for personality, how does the coaching version look like for me, right? Because every coach is different. And so what I'm coaching you on is, how do you use your personal brand around your purpose, where it's like the purpose is the center of your personal brand, as opposed to the other way around, which is for most people. So that's my line in the sand. For most people, it's like, okay, I just want to launch a personal brand. It's all about them, 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 them. And the difference is when you're doing a purpose-centered brand, you are very aware and clear that is about how what you're great at can serve other people, because doing that brings you joy. So it's not even it's not a task. It feels like, okay, this is the thing I'm supposed to do in this world. And I know that if I help, whatever amount of people, it makes me feel good. Those are the kind of people I work with. And so take that combination of all my experience in PR, brand, and marketing, add my experience in as a model and all the things I learned, to use that now to help women create brands that are purpose-centered.
Mm-hmm.
You can build a personal brand around it that is beautiful, that positions you as a thought leader and expert, and where people can pay you whatever you ask for because they know you're great at what you do. So a combination of that is what I do now. So the coaching is the way I would do it based on my experience.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I also know that obviously just through our conversations, especially when you were doing the purposeful branding session, that even though you were very focused on the client, in this case was me, and you did mention your pom poms, which is funny because I remember you brought them out, and I'm like, "Do you have yellow?" Because that's my favorite color. And you actually brought yellow. I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is catered to me." And I think there's something there about, again, just the energy you bring to the conversation that I appreciate about you. But I wanted to delve into a pivotal moment though, when you had this moment of clarity and something had happened.
Yeah.
And I want you to tell that story in your own words.
Yeah. So this was in 2009. I had just left. I had a great job. That was the job where I kind of like realized I'm going to do this, but I didn't step into it. I was working as a director of communications for a company that plans classical music. So I was the Black girl in the middle of all this opera and dance and all of this stuff. And it's funny because most of the time when we would do our events, they were like, "Oh, are you a dancer?" I'm like, "No, I'm running this show. Like, yeah, I'm working this, And so, from that experience, I was like, okay, I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur before I turned 30. So this was 2009 when the economy was going bonkers, right? The depression. And so I wrote my resignation letter January 30th, I believe. I left the job and I was like, all right, I'm gonna support entrepreneurs in getting their purpose out there. And I started working from home, and when you work from home you waste a lot of time. I learned that the first 4 months. I'm here watching Law and Order, and you never watch one episode ever, like 4 episodes.
No, you don't.
I'm like 4 hours of my life gone, like what in the world? But so I got into the sync of just working. Now the thing is, I had international clients, which means my sleep schedule was horrible, terrible. I had clients in Europe, clients in West Africa, clients in Canada, and I think I had one in the Caribbean. My time just off. Like I didn't have a regular sleep schedule. They'll call me, I need a press release, something just happened, I'm up, working. And so with all this kind of stress, and then I had one client that was just really difficult, and that literally added to my stress. And so one of these times I was like laying on the sofa and I took a nap. I was like, all right, let me take a nap, take a rest, since middle of the day. And I woke up and I tried to get up and I couldn't. I could not move my legs. And I'm like, my heart just started skipping beats. I was stressed out. I started to cry. And I'm like, what do you do when you wake up and you can't move your legs? And so luckily my phone was next to me. I picked up my phone. I called one of my doctor friends, and I'm crying on the phone. I'm like, I can't move my legs. I can't move my legs. She's like, oh, calm down. And she tried to calm me down. And she had me do a series of things, wiggle my fingers, wiggle my toes. Eventually my body started responding. And I didn't understand what was happening. So like, that's my first alarm, but we don't listen.
No, we don't.
Nope. So I was like, all right, well, I'm fine now. Going back to work, blah, 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 doing the crazy schedule. And not long after that, I ended up in the hospital from adrenal fatigue. Wow. And adrenal fatigue is what happens when your adrenaline kicks in when it's not supposed to, right? So it's like if something happened that scared you and your adrenaline kicks into safe, fight, flight, or freeze, right?
Right.
And so the difference is with adrenal fatigue is basically your adrenal glands are fatigued, so they don't kick on when they're supposed to. So I'm sitting down and my body's shaking because I have a bunch of adrenaline rushing in me at the wrong time.
Wow.
And so my body couldn't tell, like, okay, what are we?
It wasn't responding, basically. It was just running.
Yes. And so so in that moment, they did a bunch of tests and, nothing crazy. And I was just like, and in that moment, I just thought my best friend was sitting next to me and I was just in my own thoughts. I just closed my eyes and I was like, if I die today, none of this stuff that I'm stressing about will matter. None
Mm,
of it. Like
mm.
I just realized none of it, no matter how important I thought it was, I was like, none of it will matter. And I was like, my family will eat rice, they will cry, and they will move on. Like matter of fact, we're all gonna leave this planet someday. And I was
Right.
clear on that. And that was the moment that I was like, all right, something has to change. And I've kind of been clear, like I have all this energy, not for me. I was aware of that. I had this one friend long time ago who had offered me to smoke pot because he's like, you need to calm down. You're too much. I was like, dude, this is not for me. I realized later on that this energy that I have is so that when I work with my clients, they're fired up to do what they're called to do. So
Mm-hmm.
this energy is not for me to use. And so I realized in that moment, I had to decide that
Mm.
I was going to shift something. And so I decided that I was going to change my life in 30 days. That was October 2009.
Wow.
I remember it distinctly because I had gone on Facebook at that time and I started posting inspirational comments that from that day too long, anything I posted was like, I said to myself, I'm going to be conscious about the energy that I put out in the world. I'm going to be conscious about what I say, how I say it. Like the level of awareness I decided to jump into, I didn't realize how much work it would be because your thoughts run. And so making that decision kind of put me in a space where I had to master my thoughts, and I'm still doing it. It's a lot of work. It's a commitment to self-mastery that I made that day. And so that's kind of what happened. And everything changed since then. When I say everything, it was not long after that I attracted one of my biggest clients. Davido was my client for a while. We did like 5 of his
Oh,
music videos.
wow.
I literally planned, I put the team together, everything like in 5 days. I got Iris, like a whole bunch of artists and just people that I would otherwise not gotten to work with. Like once I decided to step into that purpose, things started moving. My best friend introduced me to my husband, and we started getting. It was just life changed.
Everything fell into place.
Everything fell
When
into place
you,
with the understanding that I would have to work hard every day to maintain that. I
mm-hmm.
don't get to be like, okay, I've decided and that's it. It's a daily commitment, and that is hard.
Yeah. So there's so many things I want to unpack there because I think you touched on a lot of things. Actually, you talked about this. You already knew what you wanted to do. You already heard the whispers, but you kind of like ignoring it. You're just like,
Yeah.
I'm good. And then, of course, life hits you. There's this health crisis that reminds you
Yeah.
that, quite frankly, life is short. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people just have gone through a lot of
Yeah.
introspective
Yeah.
moments. Part of that was what drove me to even take your session. And I
Mhm.
think there's also something to be said about going through that. And then the next step is action, and then committing to that action for 30 days.
Right.
And then you obviously didn't, I would like to say you had a hell yes moment because you didn't take too long talking yourself out of it. Because the more you
Yeah.
ponder on it, the more you
Yeah.
get out of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you start to see changes in your life. And there's something you said. You said, I had to learn how to master my thoughts
Yeah.
or your mind. Can
Yeah.
you talk about how and you said you keep doing it too. So can you talk about how you did that and
Mhm.
how it still keeps you focused on your purpose that you're
Right.
doing right now?
So, as positive as I am, I realize the strength of your positivity is also the strength of your negativity.
Ooh.
And so you get to decide which one you're turning up and turning down. And so when I started to like, I was like, okay, let me see what I'm thinking. Just pay attention to what's popping up. I mean, I had some crazy dark thoughts sometimes that I'm like, why are you thinking this? Why? There's no reason for this to come up. And so I started to track my thoughts, like something positive would come up and I would think the worst case scenario. What if?
Mm,
And here's the thing, literally your thoughts become, this is the power that we have. This is my connection with God in terms of how I think about this. We have the breath of God in us. And
yes.
because we have the breath of God in us, we too can create.
Wow.
God is a creator. And so because you have a little piece of breath of God in you, you have the ability to create. And the first step of creation starts in how you think.
Mm,
And so when I started to track my thoughts, I'm creating some bad juju energy in here like that. I'm like, I know I don't need, and nobody's doing it. I'm doing it. So I don't get to blame this on somebody.
self-inflicted.
Right. And so once I decided, okay, let me track my thoughts. That's how we started, because you don't get to just jump and say, I'm going to start thinking positive. I was like, let me track my thoughts. So that I remember that day, because I can tell you, even if you ask me today, everything that happened from the morning to the night, because I was like, I want to pay attention to my day. Everything from who crossed the street, what the person was wearing, everything. I paid attention. I was like, and I lost count of how many negative thoughts.
Wow.
As much as I had positive thoughts, there's a default, right? Because your mind has both. And so I tracked it, and I was like, okay, this gotta stop or something. And so at that point, I still didn't have the tools to understand and manage it. But I knew that something had to change. And so what did that look like for me was I started meditating. And my mom taught me to meditate since I was a kid, like legit sit down, cross your legs and meditate.
Oh,
and so
wow.
So I started practicing meditation again. And that was so helpful, because I got to catch it. It forced me to watch my thoughts. And not most of us can't face our thoughts, because you have to sit down there and all the thoughts will come and then you get distracted. It forced me to hear what I was thinking. I was thought, wow, and realizing how powerful my mind was.
Wow.
Because something as simple as, and this is one of the ways I tested it. I was driving one day and I saw a plastic bag flying as I'm driving. And in my thoughts, I said, that plastic bag is going to get stuck under my car. And I kid you not.
And it happened.
Yes. When I got to the place, I just started laughing. I'm like, this is how powerful our thoughts are. And that one was, it's not always instant, but I was like, this is how powerful. So when I started paying attention to that, I was like, okay, how do I manage those thoughts? And so meditation started helping, and in Nigeria, when somebody thinks bad thoughts, you say, God forbid,
exactly.
Right? You do this, God forbid.
Yeah, you do the action, the full thing.
I did that so many times.
And the snapping of the fingers.
Here's what I learned from that has helped me, that may help someone who's listening, that's not always a good thing. Because even your negative thoughts have a positive intent.
Oh, okay. You have to get.
Even your negative thoughts have a positive intent. They're trying to protect you from something or make you feel something, right? So it might be to make you feel like you're correct. That's a positive thing, to make you feel like, okay, you thought this thing would happen and it happened. Like, I knew it was going to happen. It was like, okay, it's validating you, right? Or it's trying to protect you. Like, you're thinking, you're like, okay, if you're driving, you're like, oh, if I'm going to jump into this pothole, it's trying to protect you so that you can be alert, so that you don't jump into the pothole.
Okay.
Like, even your negative emotions have a positive intent. And so the moment I started realizing that, this was later, like way later, that I was like, okay. So instead of doing this, I was like, okay, what are you trying to tell me? What are you trying to protect me from? And then I have to talk myself. I was like, okay, you know what? You're okay. I know you're scared about this, but I understand the reason you're scared is because you want me to make sure I know all the things I need to know before I jump into this thing. So don't worry, I'm going to learn all I need to know so that you don't stress out. So back up, because we now have positive energy here.
Right.
And so that is still a daily commitment. Like, it's still hard.
It is hard. And so it's funny, because I think, and of course I'm not an expert on this, but I do read spiritual stuff as well. And the two things that came to mind when you were speaking, one is The Secret. I'm sure you've heard of the Secret, the book. And that's actually what they talk about, the power of thought. And I remember when I first watched it, because I didn't have the time to read the book, but I actually watched the documentary that was on Netflix at the time. And I remember it said, anything that comes to your mind, it'll come into fruition. So it actually said, so I now tested. I remember I was driving to HEB, which is like a local grocery store here in Houston. And I was like, I want a parking space right in front of the grocery store. And lo and behold, I got a parking spot. I'm like, it will, like, what is this magic? Then I was like, okay, I'm going to test it again the next day. And I'm like, wait, this is scary. And I think, to your point about it being hard, I think it's hard to remember to even practice that. Because I haven't always gotten my parking spot. And I'm like, damn it, I didn't think about the parking spot in time. And you don't know if it's coincidence. Like, you're literally just testing out this positive thought thing. And so I appreciate you sharing that it is hard. It's a daily, constant habit that you have to intentionally work into your life. So did you do all of that on your own? Was it through reading books?
No, I'm big on books. So there's something out that's like, I'm very spirit led. So which is like, if something is like, okay, you have to say it, I'm going to say it. So there's something I want to share that I think you can look into. And this was kind of a, what is it? What would we call it? Epiphany, one of a thought moment that I had. And this was probably sometime last year. And I read books to master. That's it. I read books. I have a few mentors, but books are my teachers. And the thing on the spirit level that I learned that I was like, oh my God, this is transformative, was realizing that if you believe in God, because I do, right? Not everybody does, but I believe that there's something bigger than us, because there's nobody that knows everything. So there's something bigger than you that is making you possible. And so the kind of thought that came to me was, and I don't believe in good and evil in that word or something bad. So I see good and evil in terms of a spectrum. It's like good is like, okay, you have less bad, and bad is like you have less good, but good, even good has a little bit of evil in it. Evil has a little bit of good in it. So putting that in mind, the thought that came to me was that your thoughts are so powerful that the first step for, and I use this word as just as a metaphor for evil or the devil, whatever you want to call it, the first step is for it to attack your thoughts. Because it does not have the power to make you do stuff. It can't, the devil can't make you do diddly squat.
It is
doesn't
real.
have the power. However, it is a master, and think of it, and I think of it as an energy, right? And negative, and a bunch of negative in it. It is a master manipulator of thought. And so when you have a plus thought and some negative thing comes in, I see it as that is the negativity's first step. It knows that it has to catch you in that first step of thought. And in that first step of thought, it needs you to do the work. It can't do it. So it needs to convince you in thought. So who really has the power?
You do.
That's it.
That is amazing.
And so that epiphany, I was like, oh my God. That we literally have the power in our hands. And so the power comes from your thoughts. And the idea is when the negative thought shows up, have the conversation with yourself. Okay, why am I thinking? Like dig in and remove that essence so that it's not even there. It's not just a matter of pushing it away. Because what happens when you push it away is you now have a stack of, negative thoughts sitting that will explode someday.
Right.
And you're just like walking around scared all the time. It's stressful. Like there's the books that changed my life. I have it on my website, yetundeshorters.com. I think /books. If you click on the books tab, I share the books that transformed my life. In terms of the major paradigm shifts, and just got me to understand mind, mastery, and ourselves as human beings differently. And how can you replicate that so that you're having impact on a molecular level. That's
powerful. And I appreciate you even taking the time to even share the books, because I think it speaks to something. Actually, this is a great segue. It speaks to something that I think you can talk through. And you kind of touched on this at the beginning of our conversation, which was when you're saying, looking back, being reflective, you saw how everything connects. One of my favorite quotes is actually driven by that premise, which is, you can only connect the dots when you look back, which Steve Jobs said.
Right.
And so, if you had to summarize the one behavioral, if you can, one or two behavioral traits that showed up consistently before you, across every single thing you've done, what would it be? What's the common thread?
One common thread is the attention to detail. It's the little stuff. The little stuff that makes a big difference. That's it. That in all of it, when I think about it, it's the little stuff. Is the way you decide to present. Because I was a reporter for like a year in Chicago. Is the little way you decide to present differently. Is the question you ask in the interview that makes someone feel extra special. It's the thoughts you have when you're having a photo shoot that show up in your eyes. Like those are things that I'm able to tap into that most people don't necessarily think about when they're doing a photo shoot. They just like everybody's used to a certain pose. It's the it's with PR, the way you do things so that people are attracted to you as opposed to you going hunting for them, or finding them. And so the detail, like that the attention to detail is my superpower that connects to that all through.
I love that. And that's the consistency in your brand. Yeah. And so, we have to go to the other side of this conversation. You kind of touched on this, but I want to make sure that there isn't anything else left to tap into from your own experiences. What have you had to overcome to step into the purpose when you got that moment of clarity, you
Mhm.
saw that, okay, I'm going to do a 30-day plan for myself. What did you actually have to overcome to step into it and stay in it?
Yeah, that it was myself. I literally, it was, and that's the biggest revelation and challenge I had then. Is most of the time we're the ones in the way. We are the ones in the way.
Mm,
And because I was very, full on entrepreneur, then most of my friends were still 9 to 5. So I didn't really have anyone to even talk to. I had to face me and my thoughts, and so that was the biggest challenge of one, the epiphany and the challenge, like realizing like, oh my God, I am in control of this, meaning I get to decide, but also I'm in the way. And so honestly, having a moment of, come to Jesus and come to God and I just praying of, God, I need your strength to understand this path, whatever you need me to. Like I remember praying about um wanting to be motivated towards what my visions are, what God's
mm,
plan for me is, and deciding that I prefer that over mine because mine has limitations. Like, what I think I want, once I get it, then what's next? It's like, okay, what else? So I remember deciding, okay, I can't be motivated by, I cannot be motivated by the things I wanted to get away from.
hmm.
That can only take you so far because it runs out. Because after
Because it's a false
you
premise.
it's a false premise, and it runs out because you can only be angry at somebody so much and say like, oh, I want to prove that I'm this. Like after you won't be angry anymore. So what's gonna happen, right? You
Right.
max out of anger, and so for some people they need that up until a certain point. You need something to get away from, but there's a point where that doesn't work anymore, and that's where you get to a point where you're not fulfilled anymore. You don't have that rage that you had when you first started. Because now you have to go towards your aspirations. And
Right.
I remember deciding that, you know what, God, I know you have I see the vision. I see it. Like I see the vision you have for my life. And as someone who has a problem trusting, I had a problem trusting God,
Mm,
like deliver, because I'm like, I need to be hands-on. And God is like, yeah, no. I'm like, yeah, no, we got to negotiate this. And so deciding that I wanted to let God's path, what I want for myself and what God wants for me, I realized were two different things. And I have to decide whose path do I want to take. And I was like, yeah, well, mine is limited, so I want that. So
right.
the other one will require faith. And that's what I've been working on. How do I hold on to faith in a way that is unequivocal? You cannot doubt, because every time you doubt, you're resetting. You said resetting the button, and I don't have time. So I'm like, once you believe, you just got to believe. Because if you doubt, I'm like, you started over. I'm like, that's 2 years. No, we don't have the time.
No, and it's funny you say that because I just had this epiphany probably about 2 months ago, and it was about faith and fear. They literally
Mm,
occupy the same space
that's
because you do
right.
not see it.
That's right.
And when I saw that, I was just like, yeah, that makes sense. But my goodness, that is hard to overcome
Yeah.
because the same energy, it's either you're trusting or you're not.
Yeah.
But you have to believe in something you don't see either way.
Yeah. And that is faith. And
And that
most
is
people
faith.
don't have that. And
That's that's even fair. Even fair too. You don't see it. You just
yeah,
it's all in your head. You have to
yeah,
you
yeah,
believe it's there. So it's like you said, you knew if you just go back this way, you're gonna reset. You're gonna lose 2 years of your time.
yeah, yeah,
And that wasn't an option.
yeah.
Um, I love what you just shared, and I think it reminds me of something that I read about you that you posted. And I actually want you to talk about it because I live vicariously through quotes. I love quotes. I think there's just a lot of insight that you
Yeah,
get from these
yeah.
sound bites or someone's clever way of just articulating some things
Mm-hmm.
in life. But there's one that you said. You actually have a lot of things that I love that you quote that I could quote you on. But there's one that you said that I would love to just hang on my wall. Like I'll buy it if you made a sign. But I want you to say it in your own words.
Yeah.
And I'm
Um,
talking about your thoughts
yeah.
on mastery.
Yeah. Um, and this was actually, earlier this year that this came to me. And it's one of those things that is a message for you and those you serve, right? It was one of those things that, it's not, and it was like, it's not enough that you know what your purpose is. The work is in the mastery of your purpose. So it's like, what are you doing to master your purpose? What does that look like? Are you reading books? Do you have mentors? Are you, testing stuff and making mistakes and practicing? Are you showing up the way you're supposed to, consistently, where like you now have the data to do tests and prove, okay, this is what's going to work. So it's not enough that you're like, okay, this is what God called me to do, or this is what I'm supposed to do on this planet. Well, how do you master it? Right? You can't have talent without discipline. If you're not disciplined to do what you need to do for your purpose to fully realize itself, then you're half-assing it. Excuse my French. Like you're not doing it full justice.
Right.
And so that means once you figured out what your thing is, what are you now going to do to master it? And how many years I've been on my mastery, like I told you, it was 2009. I remember deciding that I want to master myself. I want to master my purpose. I want to master this thing I've been called to do, and I think it was, I forgot who said this, but the idea of like, the quote about, you can master your opponents, and that's great. What's the master yourself?
Look, our memory's going to fail us. I know what you're talking about. Sun Tzu.
Yeah, Sun Tzu. That's right. Yes. Like it's, the power is in self-mastery. And I've been on this journey since 2009. And it is work and it is commitment, but there's so many insights in here that I'm like mind blown that I get to share with my clients. And the latest one I've tapped into that I'm just like, oh my God, I cannot wait to finish, learning about it so I can share is the alpha state.
Ooh.
Right? Alpha state. How do you access your alpha state? Like the ALPHA, your alpha state. How do you access it on cue? Right? Most people access the alpha state. Like when you think of people in prayer, that's your alpha state. That's why when you finish praying, you feel like this is going to happen, right? Or when you're having that beautiful thought and there's no negativity around it, and then it comes to like that parking spot. That was your alpha state. That parking spot that you're like, I'm good to. That was you accessing your alpha state on demand.
Oh, wow.
I'm telling you. And so it's the idea of how do you access it consciously, consistently, so that you can literally manifest anything you want every time. That's what I'm learning now, and it's mind-blowing.
Okay. So definitely going to have another conversation separate on that, because I think there is a lot to unpack there, because I also believe, again, it goes back to spirituality and what you believe. If you understand the tenets of spirituality, there is more than just one within, to make it, not to make it elementary, but there's the ego, and there's there's all these different states of mind. And like you said, there's an alpha state. So I don't want to delve off track here, but there's something I wanted to ask you, because I love what you said. You said it is not enough that you know what you're called to do. It's your responsibility to master your purpose. And I would love to understand, when you gained that clarity, because you said it was spirit-led, when you gained that clarity, what was your emotions in that moment?
I cried. I cried. And I remember my husband coming into my office and he's like, babe, what's going on? I was like, I just heard the message. He's like, what message? And I was like, the message of, I got to focus. There's something I've been called to do, and I got to focus on it. Stop being distracted by everything, including, earning money. It's like, I sent you to do something here. I need you to do it. Don't worry about the other stuff. And I was crying. I was literally crying. I just got emotional because I was like, it was like clear as day. I'm like, got it. I'm an auditory person. So for me, I hear, right? Someone who's visual will say, you see more stuff. And so that was my reaction. I cried and I was like, got it, committed. And whatever that looks like, I'm like, you know what? Done.
But I think that's amazing, because you've been on this journey, like you said, since 2009. And so you got that moment of clarity. And I think that in itself is a wow. All right. So we're going to transition a little bit here. And I think I want to go back to purpose, because that's part of what we're trying to talk about, especially with your, with what you do. Right. And I'd love to hear your perspective on what is purpose and how that's different from passion.
Right.
Or is it one and the same?
Nope, not the same.
Thank you for listening in to part 1 of my conversation with Yetunde Shorters. I hope you got to hear how she successfully transitioned from a successful PR career to becoming a certified personal coach. How a pivotal moment, I call it the Kadara Woman, led her to commit to self-mastery and align her life with her purpose. In part 2, listen into how Yetunde talks about mastering your thoughts, the spotlight analogy to living out your purpose, and she also talked about the difference between purpose and passion. And if you listen to the end, we'll have a special quote for our listeners. One more favor, please be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can also follow us on social media at Kadara Woman. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a rating so that we, yes, all of us, can continue to amplify these untold African women stories. Thank you so much for listening. Until the next episode, stay inspired as you figure out your next best step to living your radically destined life. This podcast was created, produced, and recorded by Lola Harris and sound edited by Mo Isu. The Kadara Woman podcast is a production of Kadara Media.